Hi, Book 2. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie. So, first of all, by the way, if anyone asks, the only reason why I'm red in this area is, first of all, I cannot for the life of me, like, sunscreen or suntan lotion or, like, moisturizer with sunscreen on me without getting it in my eyes. For some reason, I'm just not good at, putting it far enough away from my eyes not to get it in them. So my eyes will start burning and leaking, and so my mom is just tired of having to explain to me where to put it. So I don't ever put it on anymore. And once it gets closer to the summer, I'll probably resign the fact that I'm gonna have to wear a silly little hat to work. Because with my job and everything, I am outside for an hour pushing carts back and forth from the crowds out in the parking lot, or sometimes in various spots in the parking lot, and bringing them back to our little lobby area. Well, actually, we don't even keep them inside the lobby anymore. We just keep them on for the sake of argument, I'm going to say the porch of the store. So that's the only reason why I'm, like, red. I get red easily here. I really need to practice putting that stuff on me, but I don't want to spend, like, a whole day with my eyes burning and not being able to go outside and stuff, so I don't know what I'm gonna do about that, but anyway, I just want to let you know, that's the only reason why I'm, like, red here. But anyway, so my last video was not a book video. It was actually it was kind of book adjacent, as in it was about an author's work it was about a miniseries that was written by an author, the Stephen King miniseries. So it was kind of book adjacent, but I did want to go more back into the book direction. I do have some ideas of doing videos on characters that I like. I tried that once before, but I never followed through with it. I only did maybe like one video about Jane Eyre, for instance. The character, not the whole book itself, but specifically Jane herself. And I want to say, I think I did talk about Rochester, but that might have been when I tried to do a more silly video about, would you date this character? And I talked about Rochester. But I'm talking more of my attempted analysis, despite the fact that I'm not a psychologist and have never studied. Well, I did take a psychology class, and I really enjoyed it, but I've never pursued it other than a couple times I've studied it and have taken a class. But I just thought that would be kind of fun, but I'm not prepared for that yet. So this is actually going to be a video where I wanted to talk about why I love Dickens, Charles Dickens. I was tempted to do a why I have a preference for Dickens over Anthony Trollope, but then I figured, can I really do that when I have only read a handful of Trollope books? It is true, I do lean more towards Dickens, and some of my Trollope books, even though I enjoyed them and enjoyed reading them, I have decided the ones that I've read to put them in the donation pile, to donate them to Gibbons, to share with other classic readers. In my Dickens books, I want to keep them. Just as I want to keep most of my Stephen King books. Not all of them, but most of them. But I still feel like I can't really make a fair assessment on how preferring Dickens over him, but I do prefer him over Trollope, at least so far. So I just decided to make this more of a video where I talk about why I love Charles Dickens and his work. So Charles Dickens is an author that wrote serially, so that he didn't get, I don't think he got actually paid by the word. I think that was just a rumor. I think the only reason why his books are so long and they feel so episodic at times, which is funny because in some cases I don't like episodic stories. But with Dickens, he's one of those authors where I don't mind it so much. Except for, although I don't love the Pickwick Papers as much. but he would write like weekly or monthly installments. So he would have to keep the reader engaged in the story and want to read the next issue. So that's why some of his chapters would end on cliffhangers. And that's why they are often so long, because eventually, someone published them all in one big book. I mean, not all of his stories, but each story that he wrote, they all eventually would get published in one big book that eventually we would read today. So that's why they're often so long. Not because he got paid by the word, so he wanted to write a lot of words. Although he is, in layman's terms, he is very wordy. It depends on the kind of person you are, the reader you are, I think, if how you feel about that. Because some people, especially, today's readers, don't necessarily like long-winded sentences. Some readers prefer a more simple writing style. Because he is very descriptive and writes these very poetic sentences. Or at least really long sentences with a lot of commas. But I do appreciate that his sentences will actually end. And there aren't, a long... that's my problem with stream of consciousness, is they're just a person's continuous thoughts. So sometimes it doesn't end in stream of consciousness, but with Dickens, it does end. His sentences they're long, they can be long, they can almost look like a mini paragraph, but they do end, which I really like. I haven't given up on stream of consciousness, but, so, why I love Dickens is because he almost creates a fantasy world. Like, one of the differences I've heard between him and Trollope is Trollope's books, I think, are more realistic of that time, the time period when these two guys were writing their books. That, the characters are more, realistic, more authentic to the time period. They're just regular people of that time. But Dickens, there is an exaggeration to his characters. There's a whimsy to his characters. Or there's a sinisterness to his characters. Or there's a sweetness. Like, an almost too good type of character. That's why, Oliver Twist and Nell from the Old Curiosity Shop and Oliver from Oliver Twist are not my favorites of their respective books, because they are almost too good. They are very angelic characters. But with that being said, both those books, the secondary characters are some of my favorite characters. I really, I think, the villain, the antagonist of the Old Curiosity Shop that is so evil, but so deliciously cruel and evil, and he's so much fun in his sinisterness, and you are rooting for Nell and her grandfather to escape him, but you're also having fun doing it. I also, I do, as someone who's, and as, when I've talked about the Old Curiosity Shop, when I read it, because I ended up listening to it, because my copy of the book, it was an used book, and it was one of the first times where a used book was, really, a crappy book, because the book, essentially fell apart on me. It came out of its binding. So I ended up, because, I got a 99-cent copy of it for my audiobook. The one that comes with Apple, not the Libby app, but the one that actually, so technically I listened to it. But, and I still, and as someone who is very close with both my grandfathers when they were alive, I definitely had a soft spot for that aspect of the story. This devotion that Nell has to her grandfather, this bond that these two people, this grandfather and grandchild, this bond that they have, this wanting to take care of each other, I absolutely love that bond, that relationship. Even if Nell was kind of an annoying character because she's almost too good. She was so angelic. And that's the same with Oliver. Oliver was too good. He was a saint. He was just he yeah, they tried to get him in trouble, but he always did the right thing. He was a perfect little boy, an angel. And I liked Dodger. He was a much more compelling character out of the orphan boys. And there's actually, I loved the show about his character as a young man that unfortunately I'm pretty sure got canceled, and I couldn't bring myself to watch the last episode because it was going to have a happy ending, and I would rather an imaginary canon where they are reunited, him and his love interest are reunited, but it had him as an adult and his life as when he gets away from Fagin and tries to become a doctor and live his own life. That was a really great show for, as short as it was. It was only like one season, but it was still an intriguing plot. But I definitely preferred his character over Oliver. And funnily enough, in that show, they did include Oliver. They brought him back into that show as an adult, and he's kind of he's not very likable. He's kind of a snob, and, just like those regular rich people who think they're better than everybody else. But yeah, Dickens, so his characters are always so compelling and so engaging, and they're exaggerated, and it always is so much fun when he has his characters, like, he focuses on one trait about his characters, one physical feature. Like, for instance, I just read Dombey and Son, and the main antagonist, Mr. Carker, they always focus on his teeth. He's always smiling with his teeth. And, when people, like, smile with their teeth, it's usually more of a grimace. And it seems a little more, you can't trust. It gives you where you can't really trust them. They're up to no good, there's something uncomfortable about when they smile, when someone smiles with their teeth the whole time. Like, and also, you can, show how teeth are, if his teeth are the only ones that are actually really white and shiny, then that might mean that could show how his wealth, because he can afford to do that. He can afford to have clean teeth. And there's characters like in Hard Times, the father, I don't remember his name, he would always refer to facts. So he was always all about facts. Everything, that's all he cared about. He didn't care about imagination. Imagination was worthless to him. So he was all about facts, facts, facts. So it really encompassed that his character was logical and all about information. He was very logical minded. All he cared about was information and that kind of knowledge. That was the only thing that was important to him. That was the only thing that was worth it. Creative thinking and imagination did not matter to him. That was not important. That was worthless to him. So it showed who he was as a person. He's a logical minded person. There's a scientific term, I think, for that, and that kind of brain, that kind of mindset. I'm sure there is. I just can't think of the word. And just each of his characters, the way they speak, and things that they say and physical features about them always distinguish them as being Dickensian characters. You always can tell. And then, of course, he's one of those authors where, you refer to this as Dickensian. That is, it's now, and not everybody knows where it's from. Not everyone has read Dickens, but they've heard the term Dickensian. You can always tell when something is Dickensian. And I can't really give an example or think of a specific thing outside of his own works that feels Dickensian. But there are definitely stories where, like, it gives you the same vibes that something that Dickens would write, that he would create. So I also, I still don't even know which of his works is my favorite. I will always have a soft spot for A Christmas Carol, because A Christmas Carol's always been part of my life. It's always, other than Wizard of Oz, I've seen a lot of the adaptations. I like the newest one, Spirited Away. I mean, not Spirited Away. Spirited Away is a Ghibli film, but Spirited, the one with Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell. And that one very takes a new spin on the story where we focus on the ghost instead. While most stories, of course, it stays the whole Scrooge storyline and everything. That one does something a little different. And I also love Christmas Carol, a musical Christmas Carol starring Kelsey Grammer. That was also, that's one of the ones that I own. I do technically have the Mickey Mouse's A Christmas Carol, but I only have that on VHS. I mean, we might not even have it anymore. But I mean, we didn't try to save our VHS tapes, but I don't know where they are. But I've seen a lot of adaptations of Christmas Carol, even the Disney one that came out a couple years ago. And my dad played the Ghost of Christmas Present. So that one has always been a part of my life. And then finally I read it one day, and it's been a staple in my life, and I would reread it again. I mean, I remember the opening line of Marley was dead to begin with, or like Marley was dead as a doornail. And now you hear people say that. Now that has become a cliche to say dead as a doornail. And so, but I don't know. I mean, I love Bleak House as well. David Copperfield, Great Expectations. I think I prefer David Copperfield over Great Expectations, but I still love Great Expectations. And I haven't seen that, most recent adaptation that I think a lot of people have a problem with. I just finished Damien's. I absolutely love that one. I love how it deals with the father-daughter relationship. And I'm trying to think of Bleak House. A Tale of Two Cities, I will also always have a soft spot for, because it's the first Dickens I ever read, and I did like an essay type project for that one, because you were allowed to pick whatever book you wanted for a college literature class. And I picked A Tale of Two Cities. So by default, in a way, you could argue that one is my favorite. But that was also because I picked it out as the first one I ever read. Well, although I guess I read A Christmas Carol first, and then I read Tale of Two Cities. So I also love Dickens. There's almost a fantastical quality, not just because of his exaggerated characters, but there's a whimsy to his world, to his version of London. Like, it still feels authentic to the time, right? I mean, how am I to know? But 100%, but it does come off as being like its own world. Like, very magical and very, even though it doesn't have like fantasy creatures or real magic, or, there aren't any witches or anything, although, some of, there aren't like, although sometimes his Christmas ones do have a magical quality to them, but it does take place in a real world. But it's just hard to really explain it, because it just feels magical, even though it's not like a literal fantasy world. It's the real world. And it probably helps the exaggerated characters, because they almost feel like, because he focuses on over-exaggerate certain personalities, and sometimes in his characters do feel like archetypes at times. But it's because he's trying to focus on a certain personality type, or a certain quality, or, he's exploring certain themes in his books. So he's using these characters as vessels for those themes. And of course, if that's not what you're looking for, then that's why maybe Dickens is not for you. But I do like the themes he explores on looking at, like, the poor and he can come off, he probably can come off as judgmental and overly critical, but this was stuff that was important to him. And it's like I do like when he explores that, even if, but he does it in a fun way, like not like, it doesn't, to me at least, it doesn't come off as lecturing. It just comes off as really a fun story, a silly, sometimes silly at times, but you still get this message across. For me, when the message is done through a fictional story and done in a fun, thrilling way, a way that's magical and whimsical, and not just lecturing me, not just giving me the information, but just exploring what's important and what you need to learn about life, but doing it in a way that is not like forcing it down my throat, but done in a way that's fun and like you still get the message without realizing it. Like, it's not until the end when you realize, oh wait, they were trying to teach me something important, or trying to teach me something important to show me something that mattered to him and that I should consider. But I would like to, I can't, like, I mentioned this before, that there is a tier ranking thing that you can download, but I don't like downloading stuff all the time, that much on my computer. I get nervous about that. I get anxious about that. So I would like to do a tier ranking, but not just kind of more like talking about it instead of just showing it to you, instead of showing it on the screen, which I also don't know how to do things like split screen and all that. I'm not good at that kind of stuff, and I need someone to show me how to do it, and then they watch me do it and see if I figure it out. So I don't know how to do that. I can't really do that kind of stuff, but I still would like to rank my Dickens novels, when I'm done reading them all. And it's the novels. I'm not going to read the short stories because I have attempted the short stories. But anyway, but yeah, I definitely would like to do that. So he's, but there's just something like very engaging about his work, at least for me, and something fantastical about it. I don't know. I can't really pinpoint what else to say. I just love Dickens, and I love his work, and I love getting lost in his stories. They're so much fun to read, and they don't feel like a chore. I mean, there are moments when, just like with Stephen King, where I do feel like I'm ready to, ready to move on. But although I don't know if I should, like, because I do, there are, like, I need to, or at least I need to put down the book and read something else for a little while. But, I mean, when it gets to the end, at least. Although Dobby and Sunny did not feel that way. I mean, I don't always feel that way. But every so often, I'm, like, I need to take a break because, and it might just because I get distracted by other books and I all of a sudden want to read in that moment. But yeah, I mean, he is definitely can be wordy. I mean, I definitely get that. But, sometimes there's something about his wordiness that is charming in its own way. And he's trying to put emphasis on certain points with his wordiness. Like I said, he uses a lot of repetition, and that's because he's trying to say, this is important, this word is important, this subject is important. So he repeats it so that it gets inside your head to the point where it might get annoying, but you remember it. And if you really think about it, it probably means that it's important to him. And of course, when he exaggerates certain characters, especially the antagonist, with like describing their teeth or their, other part of their face or something, or certain words that they say, like common phrases that they say, then that's because you want to focus on that aspect of them because it's important. Like it's showing that they're a bad it could be showing that they're a bad person or they're a selfish person or something like that. So yeah, so that's, I mean, like, it did throw me off a little bit when I first started noticing that about his works. Um, but I've learned over the years that I feel like there's a point to it. There's a reason he does that. Now, I did notice in the early work, sometimes his female characters aren't always that great as a modern female reader. But the fact that I still love his stories and love getting lost in them and everything, and despite, sometimes his female characters are not that great, it's of the time, and he has improved. His female characters do improve over the year, over the books that he has written. But it's not necessarily, despite being a female reader, it's not a bad female characters aren't always or I shouldn't say bad. Female characters that are, you can tell they're written by a male author, doesn't always, or at least in that kind of, in a Victorian Regency novel, it doesn't necessarily, I might roll my eyes at it, but it doesn't bother me as much. As long as it's a good story that I'm engaged in, that I want to keep going, want to know what happens. And Dickens doesn't. Despite, that sometimes his female characters aren't that great, I still want to know what happened. I still want to keep going with the story and wanting to know where we're going with these characters and what's going to happen to these characters. Because sometimes his female characters are a little too goody-goody at times, and that can be annoying. But, like I said, a lot of times his book, even despite that one female character, is still not enough for me to, not love the book. I've loved every Dickens book that I've read. Even Hard Times, I did enjoy it. I liked it. But it wasn't my all-time favorite. But yeah, there's just something about Dickens, something warm and inviting, something charming and magical in his stories that I absolutely love. And I feel like he's vastly readable. You still gotta get used to his writing style, but I think once you get used to it and get into it, he's very funny and fun to read. And it's just something whimsical and magical. And I don't know what else to say. I just love Dickens, and I just wanted to gush about why I love Dickens. And I'm trying to think what's a good place to start. A lot of these other booktubers who are more knowledgeable than I am probably say, Katie from Books and Things, I think she would always say, Great Expectations is a good place to start. The problem with the shorter works, the short stories, are that they are Christmas related, so it depends on, would you be cool with reading a Christmas book even when it's not during Christmas time? But yeah, with Great Expectations, it's first person narrative. There aren't as many characters. You're mostly focused on Pip, the character of Pip. Dobby's Son is also, not Dobby, David Copperfield is also in first person narrative, but it's super long. Hard Times is not that long. I don't know if that would be a good place to start, but it is one of his shorter works. Christmas Carol, of course, it's the most, even if you've never read A Christmas Carol, you know the story, because there are so many adaptations. But again, it's Christmas, so I don't know if you would want to read something Christmassy, or would you want to wait until Christmas time to read it. But if you want to start Dickens now, then maybe Great Expectations might be. Oliver Twist isn't bad, although I think that people like Katie would say don't start with Oliver Twist. Well, Curiosity Shop is not a bad place to start. Like I said, I don't know. Again, there's probably people like Katie from Books and Things. She's my go-to for Dickens, so she's probably a good person to watch, whose videos to watch. Maybe I should link her channel on the description box because that way you can get someone else who is more knowledgeable than I am and would have a good place to start and know where a good place to start would be. But anyway, so that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to talk about why I love Dickens so much. It's very hard to, because it's not a long list of reasons, but it is a lot of good reasons. Katie also is someone that, would give a good a good, explanation of why read Dickens. But anyway, I'm gonna see if I can look at one of her videos and see if I can find one to link to you guys, so that that's a video of her talking about Dickens as an author, and why she loves Dickens. I mean, she recently did a Dickens read along where she read his books in publication order. She did that for the last couple years. But yeah, I'll maybe, if I remember, I will send a link to her channel, because she might be a better person for if you are interested, to give you better information. But anyway, so that is why I love Dickens. And do any of you familiar? Do any of you like Dickens? Have you read any of his works? And if you have, which ones have you read? If you can't stand Dickens and hate him as a writer, that's fine. You're allowed, I don't care, but please don't talk about it. Just tell me, just reserve comment if you just hate Dickens. Because this is a gush video talking about why I love Dickens. And I'm not saying you can't have your opinion, and I'm up for, but I just wanted to talk about, why I love Dickens. Charles Dickens. And I hope you guys, if you are, if you want to get into him, or if you're a fan yourself, then I hope you like this video. And I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!